okay, in this top lane carry meta where mid and top are so focused, that's not Marin, he doesn't sound like the player, but so frequently, not just on the Rumble, but on the likes of Fizz, he's shown that new element to the game. He's shown that he can be a carry top laner, and that question mark has to go there for Trace, because that's just not one part of his game that he's shown. He's great at being denied, he's great at doing his best with limited resources, but that only goes so far, at least on patch 5.13.
Yeah. I really like this draft from Jin Air because they banned the Gragas second, which meant that SBENU was going to have to choose between Rek'Sai or TF to ban. And what they chose was to ban the TF. So that means first pick Rek'Sai. And if that didn't work, they would have given the Nidalee over to Chaser. So Catch will be playing Nidalee. That is quite curious to me. Maokai taken away.
I mean, they take Maokai Nidalee, which is a wonderful lane ganking combination. Of course, the targeted CC into very high burst damage. The Rek'Sai priority is a bit intriguing to me because if you put lots of gold on Rek'Sai, or if he's dealing with limited, or she's dealing with limited resources, it's not really a champion that can carry from the jungle.
It's still a really strong pick
absolutely.
for Chaser.
It's still a very strong pick, but is it a pick that is symbolic with a winning game for Jin Air, a winning comp for Jin Air? Where are they going to find the damage? Because it's certainly not going to be the high damage Nidalee spears providing a lot of the team's damage from the jungle.
Well, in this particular draft, though, Jin Air getting tons of comfort picks. Actually, Jin Air has one of the highest percentages of having Rek'Sai banned against them of any team. And Alistar here, too. Comfort pick for Sweet. We see the Victor bans frequently against GBM, more often than the TF. People are more afraid of his Victor. He just gets it for free here in the second round of the draft on blue side. I don't really understand what the necessity of picking this Nidalee so early was when Sasin also plays the Victor. What is going to be his answer?
That's the question. Caitlyn being hovered over. We still haven't seen a Caitlyn in Champions, despite with those changes to the passive, specifically the armor penetration on the headshot. I feel like there's some interesting uses of the champion, specifically against someone like a Maokai who really stacks armor and gets super, super strong, but it seems like this is not going to be the game to show us something new. There's still the dream of the 5.13 AP item change. Velko is coming through that was flashed earlier, but even then, Pilot insta-locks the Vayne.
Wow, so going for it this time.
Carry plants are on.
Yeah, and Pilot has been trending into playing more and more Vayne. This season in particular, that wasn't ever really a pick we saw him play before, and Rumble, just an easy lock-in here for Trace, that lowest of the low economy top laners.
And it's pretty much, you know, the comp that SKT was running the last series. Very similar. Lots of zones going to be created by the Equalizer, by Victor's W, just by all the CC and threat of the likes of Alistar and Rek'Sai. We'll see where SBENU goes with their mid lane pick. It's not going to be a Mundo unless we're going to see Maokai middle. And remember True 8 many years ago, the Triforce Rite of Ages, never forget.
They're going to flash over the Vel'Koz.
Dream.
Man, I love seeing Sasin play this Vel'Koz.
There's not a lot of backline threat. There are worse times to pick Vel'Koz.
Yeah, and he's been so good on it. He actually was outputting something like over 1,000 damage per minute in the game against SK Telecom, but Orianna, definitely a safer decision, but nowhere near as exciting.
Even thinking about this, I don't know if this is quite the Orianna comp, just because they've got Nidalee, they're looking for the Siege. Actually, it's going to be a rotational comp. They're going to take Lulu as the last pick, just to match line wave clear with the Victor. Very low damage comp, and scarily, this is the sort of comp you'd expect from Jin Air with, you know, their 19 KDA 3-0 Lulu player in GBM and their expert jungle Nidalee, because suddenly this comp, it's kind of about catch.
Yep, and it's also, speaking of catch, not only the player, but catching people out. This is a pick composition. You have to, it's a low damage 5v5 comp. SK Telecom, the first to really play around with Lulu and Sivir together back in the spring season. Now, we've seen Jin Air do it successfully too, but basically, you have to all be on the same page, and you create picks by getting to an objective first, waiting for Jin Air to sort of file in one by one, and then immediately popping all your speed to collapse on one person. So it's an interesting pick comp in that you're not really playing with Fog of War, you're just playing based on sheer speed to get that Maokai in there on a twisted advance, follow up with a spear, and play with burst. And so it's hard to do, though. It's hard to execute.
And for all SBENU's development, I wouldn't say they've ever really been all on the same page for an entire game. For parts of a game, sure. For early games, certainly. But the precision this comp requires, I think it's more than SBENU can really put together.
Yeah, if you get into a 5v5 late, SBENU is in trouble with this composition. Well, guys, can they pull it off? The pick comp, let's see. Game 1 starts now.
Love the gusto of the SBENU fighting. Easily outplaying Jinair, at least before the match starts. So maybe there'll be some wind in the sails for what is execution heavy. And when you're 10th without a series win, execution heavy doesn't sound like it should be part of the vocabulary.
Yeah, it is a risk. Now, to SBENU's credit, they've done okay with Juggermaw, which is another difficult to execute composition, but this plays, despite having a Lulu in the mid lane and an AD carry, this plays a lot differently to Juggermaw. You can't play Sivir in the same fashion. You can't just have her on the front line because she has that lower range and she will just get destroyed.
And just cast your minds back to that epic second game of KT versus Ku. Finally got to 40 minutes, finally got to the item times when Someday could just run away on that Kog'Maw, and if he didn't get shut down, could put out massive damage from range. That just could not be recreated with Sivir. It's all about the utility of the ultimate. Still a high damage threat, but you can't run through a team like Sivir, with Sivir like you can with the Kog'Maw.
Yeah, it just doesn't work, especially if this Rek'Sai and this Alistar get particularly tanky on the other team. You probably won't have the percent damage to really deal with big front lines. So it's a risk, and it does mean that SBENU has to be on these dragons, and they're expecting Jinair to be a bit late or perhaps split up.
We talked a bit, or at least I talked a bit about Rek'Sai and the fact that, okay, harder to carry with. They're actually committing 2 members to this jungle follow here.
Wow, that is quite large. So no lane freeze, and they force Chaser's flash. So interesting, but this is going to allow Trace simply to walk into the top lane now.
Not going to have to deal with the same sort of freeze. I was going to say that Chaser, you know, I mentioned, okay, you get lots of gold onto Rek'Sai, you're not going to be able to do a true carry performance. Tracer's caught out, going to take more damage.
Yeah, Flame Spitter level 1, too.
But one thing Chaser can do to carry is to shut down Catch. If Nidalee gets far behind, if he's in the jungle the whole time and denying buffs, which actually seems to be happening to Chaser this time out, this is actually a bit of a recreation of what KT was able to do. If Chaser's on top of Catch, if Nidalee's not a factor, it'll be a great game for Jinair, but so far, very held down.
Well, they did get a ward onto the blue buff, so we did see Sweet walk up into the jungle to put that down. Now, are they going to dive 4v1? Trace is only level 2.
Okay, they have a couple of stacks of the Winter's Bite. Goodbye, Trace.
Yep, goodbye. First blood for the Sivir, and barely gets out with the Summoner heal and the flash. So risky, but they make it work, and they punish Trace for coming right back into that top side. They knew that that was a possibility, going from red to blue, so a bit sloppy there from Jinair.
It's Nidalee Sivir, so there's actually a lot of turret damage from level 2 onwards. Of course, on the Sivir, you can cancel your auto attack. They have a lot of turret damage. This could be the fastest outer turret falling in Champions this season.
Yeah, definitely. We never see these 4-man stacks here. It's not like the LCS. So this is a bit of a rarity, and how they're just going to deny the wave as much as they possibly can. A nice luxury here from SBENU. So solid early game plan, actually. You can see it in action. They made a decision, going to not freeze the wave, let it push back towards the opponent, get the invade, and Trace pays for it. So first turret down in favor of SBENU.
We were talking about this stat with the owner of Oracle's Elixir, was asking about these turret trades that we see in the very early game. I believe this is the first time we've seen one of those 4-minute turrets. So how will that change the texture of the game? Because Trace, he's good at being denied, but it's much harder to be safe when you don't even have a turret to go back to.
Well, one of the reasons I feel that we don't see that strategy so often here in Korea is, first off, it took a couple of things going wrong for that to occur.
Sure.
Number one, they had to be starting Gromp right there in order to lose the buff. Trace had to overcommit to that tower kind of foolishly. And if you show your jungler in support like that, well, it really does put a lot of pressure on your mid lane. So there's a lot of, if you're willing to blow a lot of flashes and stuff, there's definitely the chance, a large one actually, to go ahead and kill the mid laner on the other team. So giving that information is not always the best way to move in League of Legends. And the other factor, too, is that when you commit like that, look at Pilot. He has now a large CS lead because he was just sitting there freezing and farming, and he's going to maintain that lead. You can see the wave is now bigger right here. So you're basically trading some global gold in exchange for concentrated gold on the enemy AD carry early. Because, of course, there have to be kind of 4 people there usually to deal with that turret. So you're not reliably going to be able to get isolated tower gold onto your AD.
At least we're getting information as to why they prioritized this Nidalee early, because Nidalee, of course, had the big mobility to get onto that blue buff. I mean, this is definitely a pre-planned strategy by SBENU. They sent 2 members to stop that jungle follow. They sent their AD carry and just gave up any hopes of a freeze. Chased Chaser out of the top side jungle. They knew he was on the bottom side. So it was actually very well executed, but as you mentioned, it's not necessarily a winning strategy. It's a risky one, but given what they wanted to do, they pulled it off very well, especially for the 10th place side in the league.
Yeah, they did. But again, it comes into Trace's misplay. If they don't get the first blood gold there, we're only talking about a 500 gold lead, but yet there's still a nearly 20 CS difference on the Vayne. So if you want a really good example of this, go watch Cloud9 versus TDK, because TDK, being a team of about 4 Koreans, executes the Korean style of lane swap while Cloud9 tries to do the LCS style. And you can see how much gold gets onto Emperor's Draven in that game as a result of that move, and he just goes off. So that's the risk that you're playing around if the enemy team doesn't make a mistake like Trace did. So that's kind of the logic. I know that there haven't been a lot of people talking about this, but it's a good time to really dive into that considering this game.
We just haven't seen a lot of data points in Champions, as you mentioned. So it took out the outer turrets. That forces Rumble to play even safer, maybe even get zoned from experience. The other thing SBENU got was 2 very nice aggressive pink wards in the bottom side of the river. So they actually do have good dragon control. They have the 2v2. As you mentioned, there's a lot of gold on Pilot, but it's unspent gold at the moment. So theoretically, SBENU have a lot of dragon control. And speaking of dragon control, they have a jungler trying to really solidify this advantage.
Catches here, misses his spear. Sweet just quickly sidesteps that. Chaser now moves into mid. Wants to give GBM a little bit more freedom, and Trace sees the jungler, steps into the top side right now.
Trades are looking good for Saw, who's 15 CS ahead. Far cry away from the Riven that does well in the matchup. Catch has actually caught himself. Nice little burst from Chaser and removes some of that dragon threat.
Right, there's a nice condemn. Secret pops the Unbreakable, stops a little bit of that damage, and he slows up. Oh, Pilot going a bit nuts. Ooh! Dies. Sweet gets the Ignite kill. Nicely played by Jin Air. Bold. And that is a very important kill now down to the bottom side. I have to say, I'm a bit surprised that Sword didn't TP.
Teleport available, of course, has a lot of counterplay with the targeted CC when he arrives. Chaser took a lot of free damage, so it doesn't look like Jin Air will be able to translate this into a dragon, but wonderful shopping opportunity for Pilot. He'll be sad he didn't pick up the kill, might have even been close to a completed Blade the Ruined King with the extra 300 gold. But man, he's got a long way towards it.
Right, and the early pickup, too, of that pickaxe, one of the other factors, and we keep talking about this, but it's really interesting, is that when you take down that first turret and the other AD carry just stays in lane, sure, you get an earlier shot, but you're probably just going to be pushing out or getting pushed in. You're going to be maybe a little bit lower in levels, too, as a result. And so the AD carry on the other team is going to get a later shot. And when you just have that pickaxe, you're then trying to grind up to a BF sword. And now this is all Pilot from this point forward.
Yeah, the kill potential every time Pilot gets in range of just the Bilge Water now, but very soon to be the Blade the Ruined King. It's always a very good 1v1 matchup for Vayne against the Sivir, but just going to be the reality. There's going to be a lot of pressure onto the Sivir. He's going to have to play just as defensively as Trace does in the top lane.
And with the Alistair about to hit 6, the dive potential is kind of going through the roof right now, as long as Rek'Sai wants to play down on the bottom side, which of course Chaser does.
CS lead is growing in top lane.
And here we go. Bolt. Secret has no flash right now. He's going to bounce around, actually. Condemn doesn't hit. Catch there. There's the ultimate. It's coming through. And TPs from both top laners. Trace does not have his equalizer, actually. Had to use it previously. So actually it gets turned around onto Sweet.
We didn't even notice that it was Sarsen running teleport as well for
I
5
didn't even
members
say that, yeah.
instantly into bottom lane. Obviously not worried about the solo kill potential from GBM. That might be important, not having a combat summoner when we're talking about the late game team fights, but they take the dragon. Successful teleport from both the solos.
I was very surprised to see Sarsen doing that. So Jin Air actually with a bit of a disrespectful play, 2 TPs to just 1, and no equalizer, so kind of a lot of miscommunication right there from Jin Air. Yeah, I didn't notice that either.
And a super defensive first shot from Trace. Picks up the Merc strats. Now against Ryze, this makes a lot of sense, but against Maokai, okay, it gives him decent combat stats. Okay, maybe that'll be a fast home guard enchant, but it's Rumble. It's not really the home guard champion. It's nice to have. It's more flexible. Maybe you're getting a slightly better position for the Equalizer. Equalizer's only going to be tickling, though, with no other true AP items.
And those 2 kills from Nuclear really going to be doing work now. He was able to go ahead and buy his BF sword with the help of that second kill. So Jin Air not really following through, and SBENU actually getting a lot out of this lane swap thanks to Jin Air's mistakes. Just TP mistakes from Jin Air.
It's a luxury teleport for Sarsen. Usually there has to be a severe mismatch or just giving up on the laning phase for you to take a non-combat summoner in the mid lane, but you look down this enemy lineup, of course, there's going to be the Victor W, but Alistair's Headbutt Pulve and Rek'Sai's Unburrow aren't really, Cleanse is not really going to interact with those CCs, so you do kind of have the luxury if you're not going to go for the Ignite for lane control.
Right, and that's typically what we see. Lulu does have a lot of safety with that Wild Growth and her shields and Whimsy, of course, so that's the typical answer, and he is going to be heading up into this top side. Trace going to overheat on a couple of rockets, but there's just no damage there with the Merc Treads.
Just no damage whatsoever. It's a lot of gold to spend for something that doesn't really feel like it's been necessitated by the picks that SBENU have put together.
Yeah, I wonder what his game is on that. Of course, he's going to be afraid, and all of the ganking damage coming through, whether it's Lulu or Nidalee or Maokai, is magic damage, but it's mostly just about that CC.
I mean, let's put it together. There's a lot of CC, because of course, we haven't even talked about Secret being able to apply the Winter's Bite and the concussive blows. The question is, when you don't have any items on the Rumble, when you're not a threat, where is your ideal positioning? Even if you have the Merc Treads, you're not going to be doing the damage or the tankiness to really impact a fight if you've got no oomph to your spells.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, to be fair, there's still good base damage for Rumble, but having that little bit of magic penetration can be very useful. Catch comes through with the Scuttle Crab, and Catch doing well. He's actually making plays in the early game this time.
So had a CS advantage, although after all the shenanigans, Trace, to his credit, has put together a couple of CS advantage himself with the Spectre's Cowl double door and Chaser.
And there he goes, gets the Unburrow. Catch has to run, has that red buff, and try and turn this around right now. Chaser gets his Raptor buff procced, and they will clear out that ward in the river. They want to make a play on the blue buff.
Or the bottom lane, of course. Alistair, as you mentioned, hit level 7 now. Very easy to tank up this bottom lane turret. No teleport for Trace, or Saw for that matter, because they matched teleports just previously. So wait and see if any plays can be made around the bot lane. They really want to all in with Pilot, but they crucially don't quite have the Blade of the Ruin King. I think he has the gold for it, just hasn't got the shot timing yet.
Yep, has to get back in order to pick up that big purchase for him. Nuclear wants the Berserker Greave, so he will have a delayed Infinity Edge here, as we typically see on the Sivir.
Curious that GBM has the Fiendish Codex in the inventory. Of course, we were mentioning that a lot of these Victor players don't want to pick up Merlinomicon or the Athenes for that matter, just because you have the less amount of item slots, you have the Hex Core to deal with, but guessing maybe went more defensive in the rune set. I guess it could be AP per level blues, but didn't go for the cooldown reduction. So one of those item slots, and what it basically means in the late game, you give up the likes of a Lich Bane or maybe just those really high 1000+ AP values.
Yeah, he usually actually really likes to buy the Lich Bane for the mobility. He's actually one of the players that almost always buys Lich Bane on Victor. So, but that does, of course, like you're saying, mean that there is less room for max AP there.
You just can't fit in Death Cap, Void Stuff, Zhonya's that really fits into almost every AP build. So something has to give. And a utility purchase like Lich Bane, unfortunately, usually the first thing you have to give up.
Yep. Well, a little bit of a Raptor steal, and now SBENU 3-man invade onto their bottom side. GBM going to surprise Sassen a little bit, but he dodges the death ray with the Whimsy.
Swapping Raptor buffs, we just saw Chaser stealing SBENU's Raptors, and the receipt comes through from SBENU. So you can see where the points of power is so far. Jin, I feel comfortable playing in the top side jungle, even though Soar's way ahead of Trace in terms of effective items. SBENU have the control of the bottom side of the map, and when we're talking about 15 minutes, that's crucial because they have excellent ward coverage around Dragon, and they've already picked up the first one.
Yep. So just a little shy of a minute until the Dragon roars back onto the Rift. Pilot now completing his Blade of the Ruined King, so a nice item timing for the Vayne, but same could be said for Nuclear as he puts the final touch on an Infinity Edge.
So he has Flash, he's staying out of vision. It'll be a bit crazy to go for any sort of Flash headbutt play with 30 seconds running down to the Dragon. Does require a bit of RNG, but man, Infinity Edge Berserker Greaves could be massive burst coming through from Nuclear.
Yeah, it could be. Now they know that Chaser is on the red buff right now. Trace kind of overextended in the top side, but he's the one at the moment who actually puts down pressure. Strangely has a blasting wand right now. That must have been just an awkward shopping timing.
It does build now into the Leandri's tournament.
Yes, it does, I know, but you really would rather have that magic pen early.
But if you go for, say, the Merc Treads, you can't really build the Ruby Crystal towards a Haunting Guys. I think you have to go for the power, otherwise you're just mute. You just can't really contribute much. So the Blasting One's not the ideal first purchase. It does delay the Haunting Guys like you mentioned, but at least it's a bit of AP to justify the Rumble pick.
Yeah, it's something. Soar, in the meanwhile, does not have the good engage tool yet of that Righteous Glory. Chaser coming here just to provide some safety while they move the minion wave closer to SBENU's turret. Catch landing a couple nice spears over the course of this time in the river, and they kind of drop pointlessly a ward right there that's immediately killed by the jungler from SBENU.
Dragon is live. This is just extending the laning phase, which is going just fine for SBENU, who do err towards power, towards maybe the tail end of the mid game, specifically when the AP's really registering on both Catch and Sassen. Managing to stop any threat of the Dragon, though, so I'm not sure what SBENU's game is right now.
Well, Jin Air will be happy just to sit on this Dragon as long as possible, get that Victor and the Vayne into a very scary late game state where that Maokai, as tanky as he is, will have a tough time against a Vayne.
Once the QSS comes through, so many different ways to outplay if you're Pilot on the Vayne.
A bit risky. Pilot trading pretty well with Secret, did get that condemn, but not substantial follow-up to really push on through here.
So Abyssal Scepter actually the first pickup for Trace. Okay, that's a bit of immediate power. That buffs up GBM. Maybe we're talking about Sick Burst coming through from the Chaos Storm. But no Haunting Guys just yet.
We do see that occasionally under Rumble. I didn't expect it.
This is basically the build you see against Ryze. You see Merc Treads rush to deal with the stacking amount of CC coming through from the Rune Prison, then into Abyssal Scepter because it builds so nicely out of the Negatron Cloak. It's a very, I'm feeling super threatened by AP damage kind of build. And again, there's a lot of AP damage on the side of SBENU. It's just curious to see it purchased so quickly in this particular matchup.
Yes, it is. Well, recall from Braum right now. Catch trying to make his way back down there. The Crab has been taken by Chaser, so no one has a good angle on the Dragon at the given time. Trace now making his way down the river. So it looks like they want to group up after they pushed it all the way to the tier 1. Soar actually losing some farm due to that action. And now Jin Air is going to be 5 people on the bottom side of the map. And Soar has a long way to go to delay this if he wants to kind of push it all the way back to the tier 2.
Doesn't have Home Guards, but does have that Righteous Glory. So which of these big purchases will be most impactful in this fight? That looms to be the big question. We're talking about Abyssal Scepter versus the Righteous Glory coming through from the Maokai. I feel like almost you need to teleport early because you had ward supremacy around this area and you're losing it thick and fast with the sweeping left.
Yeah, there you go. Pilot, they're waiting for him. He now gets onto the dragon. They're trying to burn it down. Catches there.
Defensive teleport coming through.
Yeah, but that's going to be an easy dragon. Sweet goes in onto Sasin, but I don't know how much follow-up is here at this point in time. Trace trying to kite this one out. Sweet just attempting to get out of a sticky situation. Flash onto the Glacial Fissure and just some more poke from the Jin Air Green Wings. They hold on to the Chaos Storm and the Equalizer.
A really curious defensive teleport from Soldiers was never going to impact the fight. By the time he got within 1,000 units of the Dragon, it was already down. They got good turret damage, but they held onto the Equalizer this long and just throw it down, and no answering turret being able to be picked up by SBENU.
Yeah, Jin Air did a good job of holding that. Sweet perhaps looked like he was getting a little bit over aggressive before we really saw Jin Air scale into where they needed to be, but he did get out with the flash, and that threat from Secret's Braum on the flank just not enough. The Glacial Fissure not finding a target, and they knew that if SBENU over pursued, if they tried to run down the river at them, that Chaos Storm and the Equalizer would absolutely wreck them.
This feels like the re-airing of some issues that SBENU had at the start of the season, specifically around teleport. Didn't feel like Saw knew when to teleport or where, and the result was a big-time summoner used for no gain whatsoever. We even say that swapping teleport for a single kill, no objective is questionable by top laners, and that result, getting absolutely nothing, and Trace having that teleport advantage in what, Equalizer in 30 seconds? A lot of counterplay being open to Jin Air in the next 5 minutes.
Especially with how dominant Pilot is getting right here, although Nuclear has closed the CS gap a little bit. Trying to make a play, but Tumble will just allow Pilot to get out. Quick auto attack onto the turret. Junglers now forced into this bottom side.
Catch has never been ganking this Maokai. He's never been playing around the targeted CC in lanes. A lot more conditional CC when we're talking about the likes of Braum in bot lane. Just been kind of throwing out spears as if it's an ARAM, and it's just not impacting the lanes whatsoever.
Yeah, that is, I mean, he's helping to clear these waves just a little bit, but doesn't really justify his presence or the fact that he is continually showing himself. They have a good ward there should Rumble want to TP.
It's just what does throwing spears around bot lane when both Dragon is down and your lane has no pressure really accomplish? And maybe it stops the dive from Pilot, but gives him time to go pick up the Rod of Ages. So Rod of Ages from the jungle has been the pickup by these Nidalee. It's going to be 32 minutes though, very late in the game before that 10 stack comes through.
Yeah, I mean, it's about a normal timing from a jungle Nidalee.
Feels like a couple of minutes
Yeah, a couple
late.
minutes late. Usually it's 20, 21 minutes. And like you said, those stacks not going to be showing up or making a really big impact for some time in this game. Meanwhile, Chaser will have the option to finish that Aegis of the Legion to cut down on some of SBENU's magic damage. And all props to Trace this game. He's managed to get back into it, keep even in terms of farm. But, I mean, really, power up that Maokai right now. Go for those easy kills in the long lane.
Just think about how much power Saw had, with the Spectre's Cowl double Dorans against just a Merc Treads Rumble. And they didn't play around the lane to the extent that Rumble found all the extra CS, was able to farm back up. All the pressure from Catch was bottom lane despite not having the CC in the lane. No realistic chance to pull up a gank. Okay, now finally just showing in the lane and pushing. This is something he could have done 8 minutes ago.
And Chaser does have a tunnel right there if he wants to Void Rush, so there's not realistically so much pressure. They could match TP from the mid lane, but they likely lose the tower.
Need to make the percentage plays with the jungle Nidalee, who can definitely snowball out of control. And look, it hasn't been an objectively poor game for Catch, who's struggled a lot of this season. It's just the smart junglers, the likes of Chaser, they know where to be on the map to impact this Nidalee, whether we're talking about kill pressure or putting down towers in the bottom lane.
And here we go. There's the teleport coming through. Prey Seeker already on the backside. Nuclear is going to get low, but he's not going to die, except when the Equalizer comes in. Chaser locked up underneath the turret, but Secret is falling too as the chair collapses on him, sadly.
And Maokai's still not there, doesn't have teleport. We talked about what they paid for not getting any impact onto the previous Dragon fight. Okay, Teleport's going to be up for Dragon, but Trace, 2 kill involvements, and it should be the outer turret coming down for Jin Air.
Yeah, immediate Haunting Eyes purchase, so now he's got the tools he needs, just a boatload of magic penetration to power up his abilities, and that's actually very good against champions like Nidalee, because Nidalee is so squishy at this point in time.
I see the replay. This is the standard all-in from Blade the Ruin King Vayne, but it's the other members, specifically Chase's in position. It was a heroic flash heal from Catch, very much on point, but the equalizer made it all move.
Yeah, that equalizer was perfectly placed too when they saw that that kill was not going to be coming through from Chaser. So now Jin Air snags the gold lead. They've been a little bit behind this game, but now they get it. And some nice kills and assists onto the likes of Pilot and Trace. So everything going their way. Sasson used Teleport, but wasn't able to have much of an effect with it.
These teams in Champions have sent a lot of jungle Nidalee, a lot of junglers, specifically Chaser. I've been loving to pick it up. You mentioned on the cast yesterday, big issue for these jungle Nidalee teams is who picks up the Aegis. And it's probably going to be Maokai maybe later in the game, or no one at all. Now, the one thing that I've noticed that teams have been smart to pick up, and Jin Air here as well, if there's no Aegis on the enemy team, and the tankiness in general with the likes of a Nidalee is lower, you can afford to go items like QSS third, because you're not pressured to put out the same damage, because it's just not the same resistance, especially from the jungle on Nidalee.
It also makes the flat magic pen that Trace has
so effective,
so much more valuable. Especially when you have a Victor with that huge burst. I mean, Trace is just going to help out GBM too.
The damage is going to stick on everyone except Maokai, so the base damage is there. It's going to draw the teleport, but it's quite late again.
Way too late. Terrible positioning. There we go. Flash pulled. And guess who's in the front line? It will be Secret. And he is the first to fall here. Soar has to flash. But there is a tunnel on Burrow. Soar just locked up. Tries to turn around with the Twisted Advance. Now gets Wild Growth. That's not who you want a Wild Growth. And there we go. Another kill for Jin Air. They can just turn on to Baron maybe after they push this up.
Hope comes through. The wave clear on Sivir is good, but this is lost minimization for a SBENU team who's really looking to snowball after the first dragon.
And you simply cannot play this composition like SBENU has. The entire point is Maokai is there first. You pop Whimsy on him, you pop the Sivir ult, and you collapse around one side of the pit. This strategy is actually super good on red side because you have, at the Dragon, longer routes to get around into the river. So it's a great red side strat in particular because it's harder for the other team to kind of all filter in from the mid and the bottom lanes into that objective. So it buys you more time to get that pick. But SBENU, with Maokai there, after the Dragon starts, late into the fight, before Jin Air groups up, this composition will never work like that unless your opponent massively misplays.
Talked about the ironic use of terms like the SBENU teleport earlier in the season, and to their credit, both Soar and Soul have improved at that as the season has gone on, but those old issues are really cropping up again. 2 fights in a row around Dragon where Soul's been present, you know, the teleport's been completed after the objective has gone down. Maokai really can't do anything. SBENU took that early outer turret, got smart wards around the Dragon. That's where it ended for them in terms of smart play around this comp, specifically Catch just throwing spears and just not impacting powerful lanes, rather just really trying to relieve pressure when he just could have compounded on Trace's misery in top lane.
Yeah, I mean, Trace has been playing it pretty far forward, but because Catch, even when he's invisible, they keep seeing spears. He knows he can always push forward. He knows where Catch is on the map. And that has led to a high degree of freedom in a lane that they could have really targeted and shut down, like you're saying.
It's crazy that Trace has been safer post his turret going down and having no items at, what, 5 minutes into the game than he had any right to be. This is a guy who thrives on being denied, who thrives on playing safely. Don't have to play safe when it's predictable exactly where the position of the enemy jungler is without even having to have any wards.
Yeah, well, Sweet is going to take some damage thanks to a Nidalee Spear hitting the Baron. But Jin Air, they have that center of the map presence. They have that first mid lane turret down, so they're going to easily be able to continuously threaten Baron from this point forward. Tower goes down to a split push from the Lulu, but a bit risky. They can collapse on Sasson right here. Chaser already moving to cut her off. but she's going to get away with the whimsy. Sees Chaser on that pink ward.
Isolated mid lane means that Victor's free farm now has the death cap on top of the cooldown reduction. Massive burst, especially one in Abyssal Scepter range from Trace. This is what was allowed by all the movements, specifically Nidalee being on the bot side, was a free farm mid lane, and Victor can really punish a no Aegis lineup that we once again have to know.
Yep, and TP advantage to Jin Air once again. Of course, Sasin has it, so that's why he's in the bottom side trying to deal with this Rumble. However, still a lot of magic resist there, courtesy of the Abyssal Scepter, so Trace will be able to handle that pretty darn well.
Yeah, at this point, the game very likely to play out kind of as we expected, but it was nice to see SBENU try something, you know, very early into the game. It actually, for me, is reminiscent of Energy Pacemaker, the bottom face team from the LPL spring season, who had innovative strategies like getting those 2, 3, 4-minute dragons, but it's all about what you turn that into. What do you parlay the advantage you got at 4 minutes into 10, 15 minutes down the line? And sadly, the answer for SBENU was nothing.
Yeah.
A disadvantage, even.
Well, it was a temporary advantage. They had that nice, they got Sivir rolling in a way that was kind of unusual thanks to mistakes from Jin Air, but beyond that, it hasn't resulted in a whole hell of a lot. So we now have the Rumble just continuing to split push right now. Maokai will have his TP back up soon. Chaser and Sweet trying to set up picks around the backside of SBENU's red buff. GBM is there in the shadows waiting, and oh, flash pull. Catch gets caught, but headbutted out the wrong way. Had to flash himself. Trace commits with his TP actually, so now they kind of have to do something when it comes to this Baron.
And Maokai has his teleport up. Okay, Baron control excellently in Jin Air's purview. They got the pink wards on it, multiple pink wards around the area. Maokai can come in at any point, but those teleports have certainly been off. And in a double teleport game, I guess we once again forget Sasin has the teleport as well. Sasin's teleports contributed precisely nothing apart from getting Sivir snowballing very early into the game, and Soul's been really off the boil with his use personally.
Well, at the time though, now that they have the two TPs up, at least they can 1-3-1, but no one has really enough to deal with Vayne. We see Soar actually finishing his Spirit Visage before getting any kind of armor, and this is going to allow Pilot just to build straight into an Infinity Edge before he gets a Last Whisper.
And if you're going to commit to a item that builds out a Kindle Gem that gives you magic resist, Locket's right there, and it's something the team desperately needs. I don't really see what the extra selfish stats from the Spirit Visage, the extra heal, really accomplishes for the SBENU lineup, so not liking that purchase either.
Well, he gets healed more from Italy now too.
Pray.
So Dragon back up, Dragon has the position from Jin Air already. Sasin around the side, they're pinging him out though. Now they're gonna go for a little bit of a 50-50. Vayne gonna get it now, there's the immediate engage. Huge equalizer onto the back line, and there is really not a whole lot that they're gonna be able to do. Soar gets locked up in a gravity field, but there's just too much persistent damage, and this is SBENU having to back off. Chaser comes back in. They are on the run right now, but there's the Chaos Storm. Trace passes forward, but he gets a flash out of Sivir too, and Jin Air's Pilot grabs the kill onto the Maokai. 3 for none for Jin Air, and there is the Baron that they were looking for. A little bit of life stealing off of the wards as they make their way down the river.
Vayne going to do obviously immense Baron damage. Lulu's alive. Nuclear's not that low, but isn't actually rotating to Baron, which is just a mistake. Soul will be able to teleport in 20 seconds. I mean, Sasin could even go back and teleport themselves, but Sweep was used and Baron started.
And there it goes quite quickly with the Vayne just giving all those auto attacks and the True Silver procs. And Sasin does what he can, pops his Wild Growth to help tank a turret, and then he will come out and kill some of these tunnels. Take a look at that fight again.
So Pilot is actually zoned out of doing damage for a lot of this fight. Uses the Blade Room and gets a couple of auto attacks in, but it's doing basically nothing at this point. But Nuclear's kind of the same story and is the only true damage threat on the team. The moment Nuclear gets chunked out, you can see the re-engage confidently coming through from Jenna. They hold on to the gravity field so late and then just pile on the kills.
They are very smart though for holding on to the Chaos Storm and the Equalizer in some of these fights. They know that if the re-engage comes, they will instantly win as long as they have that ability. Pilot got some decent damage there down at the end, even if he didn't have a whole lot up front.
GBM does pick up the Lich Bane regardless of the item slot issue, so
always
it's
does.
only going to be the Death Cap, it's only going to be the Void Staff. Against, I guess you could argue that against a team that at this point really can't put together an Aegis, there's not really any rush to finish the Void Staff.
Well, that's true. There isn't that much of an incentive in this particular game, except to help kill that Maokai just a little bit faster.
Veins all over that one, Monte Cristo.
Yeah, precisely. Well, I'm a bit curious about this because Ketch just hasn't been there with the Nidalee yet.
Infinity Edge.
Yeah, already done here.
To feel secure enough to build an Infinity Edge over a Bloodthirster, over a Last Whisper, there's really no armor to speak about, or resist in general on SBENU's side. That is crazy free hit damage coming through from Violet.
Or Peel, honestly. It's not like there's a big tank line for Janair.
It's true.
But, yeah, I mean, when it comes to Janair at this stage of the game, sure, they're only 4K ahead, but they are absolutely owning the tempo.
Tempo is what a comp with Lulu and Sivir, this Jugger Sivir-esque comp requires, is to play from ahead, is to have control over objectives, Baron, Dragons, turrets. They don't have the advantage in any of those. To their credit, even in turrets, but no advantage to speak of. A sweet pops the Righteous Glory.
He's going in, flash onto the back line, and there's the follow-up equalizer. You see SBENU just getting out of the turret range right now, falling right back to their inhibitor. Meanwhile, Chaser was putting on a split push right here with a nice big minion wave. He's actually just going to get it. Saucin, gets the Whimsy, so maybe get a kill, but no, there is the rest of Janair showing up at the last second to help out Chaser. They don't quite get the tier 2 in the mid lane, but that's going to be enough. They force SBENU back into their base in the bottom side and can do the same right here. Chaos Storm still up. One more turret for Janair.
Rek'Sai could have gone. Someone needs to go, though, to deal with this top lane minion wave push that's come through from SBENU. So Janair finally backs away. They'll hold on to their own buff, so that's something. Although Chaser, not quite done yet. Gets a ward down, but it looks like it's still going to be SBENU's red buff.
Now he's just here to keep the pressure on while the rest of his team goes back for a nice little shopping trip. Chaser actually gets the red buff with a Prey Seeker.
That was very casual. Very, very casual. It's just been a casual performance from Janair. They would have been surprised by SBENU just exploding off the blocks with something different that we don't see in Champions, as you mentioned. A bit more common, like the NALCS in particular, but it's just turning, just doing something different. Committing 2 people to stop the jungle follow, taking that early out of turret. That was the start of maybe a match-winning strategy from SBENU. It's just, they seem to drop the strategy book somewhere in the rotation down to bottom lane.
Yeah, I don't even really consider that the best way to do lane swaps right now for the reasons I stated. I feel it gives so much information to the other team because you know 100% where their entire team is right then, and you kind of take your foot off the gas in terms of kill pressure while the enemy AD carry gets an advantage. So,
and while I agree with that as a general strategy, the bigger point though, Monty, is that you see that a lot in other scenes. It becomes a regular thing, something you can play around. When it's the first time we've seen it in Champions, it can be a great one-off strategy. It was something different. It caught us both off by surprise. It's just, even in this particular case, they couldn't put it together to more and more.
I totally agree, and it caught Trace by surprise too, because he just kind of went into autopilot right there and made the wrong decision in that situation. Wasting his teleport and giving up first blood to a pretty easy dive.
SBENU just poke around in these open waves. There's not a lot of engage coming through from Janair, so they're relatively free to just sit in these waves, but when they start to come to the chokes...
Oh, and there you go. Condemned lands, and the TP not going to do much. Sora is there, but he's just a target for Vayne. Has to get onto Chaser, but Chaser a tanky target that's not going to do much when he twisted advances onto it. Squeeze still walking forward, even though he's a cat, misses his pulverize. And here comes GBM. They split up a little bit, catch on the run, and this Lulu and this Nidalee going to be a bit too fast for them to handle. Dragon is live. They could go for number 4, but they want the inhibitor instead with 2 members down.
There's only Sivir for Waveland. Sivir was harangued out towards the red buff. Has backed now, so we'll be there to try and stop. But with multiple members, this should be the inhibitor for Janair.
Yep, easy play. They're all at full HP now too after Chaser used the Void Rush to get back into the mix, and they can quite simply fall back onto the dragon, take number 4.
What Sarson's doing, he just makes the most of a bad situation. He did it with the outer mid turret, now he's doing it with the inner turret, takes it down despite having no mana whatsoever. Realistically, they weren't going to be strong enough or in position to contest for this dragon, specifically with Soar's TP down. So he gets something, but it's probably just going to be an asterisk on a win for Jin Air Green Wings.
Yeah, and it couldn't be lining up more perfectly in terms of timers. Look at this Baron. They are able to have time, push out their wave in the top lane. Very methodical approach to the Baron right here. As they take the dragon, they should be there right as it spawns to grab it.
It's been solid, smart play by Jin Air, despite being surprised, as we mentioned, but a lot of that facilitated by a SBENU side that just seemed to lose track of what they wanted to do about 10 minutes in. It's just been kind of academic for the last 30.
Well, Pilot and Sweet have actually been having a pretty good game. They both have 100% kill contribution so far in this one. And it's like Jin Air finally moving on to that Baron, but they've been pretty essential in all of the skirmishes, all of the team fights. And they've been able to deliver. So here we go. Jin Air immediately on their Trace. Do they see him? They do. They pinged him right there. Are they going to go in all in anyway? There's another flash, and Sweet gets in. So there's an equalizer, splitting up the carries from the back line. Sassen has to run. Secret so low, but Pilot just tumbling forward so easily to get the kills.
No threat whatsoever on Pilot with the Infinity Edge just blowing down members. They have a lot of quick members. You know, SBENU can pop the Whims, they can pop the ultimate from Sivir, the On the Hunt, and get away so they can actually get out of Pilot's auto attack range, but they're only going one way towards their base with only a few members left. So getting burned down, law appropriate Rumble versus Maokai action happening off screen.
Well, he couldn't prevent any forest fires this game. No Loki the Bear would be quite sad.
Speaking of sad, Sarson's dead. So are SBENU's hopes, and Jin Air, they're going to win the game.
That's right. Ace will lead to a Jin Air victory, 15-2 when it comes to kills. Trace will show up for the Nexus explosion party with his teleport at the tail end. So Jin Air bounced back from a mistake in the lane swap. They got caught out by the old LCS lane swap right there and made some not so great decisions surrounding it, but in the end, we see Sweet and Pilot doing work. Sweet missed out on a kill at the end of the game, sadly enough, so it doesn't end the game with the 100% kill contribution, but still a solid performance.
Just a solid performance from Jin Air in general. SBENU, it was nice to see them try something. Would have preferred this earlier in the season where they could try and take information from the little advantages they're able to get and try and put together or cobble together a winning game plan, but not to be this time despite a fun 5 minutes.
Yeah. I had hopes there for a while, Papa Smithy, but the Nidalee just wasn't working for this team. It didn't seem like they were comfortable knowing